Well, Vertical Church, today we have a special treat. We have a guest speaker who is really not a guest. She's a member of the Vertical Church family. She is a mom. She is a wife. In fact, she's the wife of our creative arts director, David Smith. She was a valued member of our staff here at Vertical Church for many years. You may have known that she's helped us so valiantly and gallantly do so well in leading the cause of our small groups and doing that with such class and dignity. She was also, in her past, a fashion designer in New York City. You know, many young girls, it's some of their dream job on that end. But she's an entrepreneur. She's one that she pioneered her own business, Hope and Sense, which is a financial counseling opportunity to help people that are trapped in those ends because God has been working a special grace in her. So I want you today to stand to your feet as Alea Litton comes today to minister to you a special word that God's placed in her heart for this day. Come on, greet her as she comes to share.
Thank you, Pastor Ken. Good morning, Vertical Church. Happy Mother's Day. You guys can take your seats. Thank you. Happy Mother's Day to all of you moms, grandmas, and all of you who mother. And isn't it amazing, moms, that to celebrate everything that we do as moms, taking care of the kids, working, cleaning, cooking, chauffeuring, getting the kids dressed for church and ourselves, and still making it on time every Sunday, giving birth. Isn't it amazing that to celebrate all of that, we're given one day a year? I encourage you, moms, use today wisely. As Pastor Ken mentioned, I was on staff here at Vertical Church for 5 years up until this fall. And I know that many of you know me as, quote, that lady who does the video comments. That's what I would hear a lot. But believe it or not, I did have a couple of other responsibilities besides telling you where to find your connection cards. And my time here was definitely a season of learning and a season of growth. This was my first job in church ministry after my career in fashion, and I learned a lot. I learned from a lot of you who had the privilege of serving during those 5 years. I learned from our staff team, and I learned a lot, especially from our senior leaders, Pastors Ken and Pastor Kathy. And let me just take this moment to publicly say thank you, Pastor Ken, for my time here. Thank you for the model that both you and Pastor Kathy set as leaders. And thank you for trusting me up here today in this moment. Now, if you attend Vertical Church regularly, or even if you've just visited once or twice, then you probably know that the church's mission is leading people to take their next step with God. It's to help you identify your very next move in your lifelong journey of following Jesus. Now, you may not realize this, but right now, and at any given moment, we are all on multiple journeys. Not only are we on a journey in our faith, but we're on a journey in our finances, we're on a journey in our relationships, we're on a journey in our careers, our personal growth, our physical health. Moms, we're all on a journey in our parenting. And just like with our faith, we have a next step to take in each of those journeys. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, the importance of having a plan for those next steps. One crucial factor that affects all of our plans, and that in the midst of having plans, we need to make sure we leave room for God to do his thing. Now, how many of you would describe yourselves as planners? You kind of know what you're going to do, when you're going to do it. Okay, a few of you guys. You guys would be proud. If you're planners, be proud. Come on. I admire you planners. You guys kind of have it all together. You probably have today planned out in detail. You set out your clothes last night. You probably know exactly where you're going to eat after church. You're going to call ahead to Texas Roadhouse as soon as you leave here so that you don't have to wait. You guys have it all together. I admire you guys. Now, how many of you are the exact opposite? You kind of take things where they come. All right, more of you guys. You guys are spontaneous. Love you guys. You bring a sense of adventure to everything you do. You guys probably didn't know you were attending this service until about 20 minutes ago. So we're all just glad that you're here. We're glad that you made it today. You guys probably have no clue what you're doing right after service. No clue. But whatever it is, it's going to be a blast. And it might involve the person sitting next to you who you just met a few minutes ago. So love you guys. Now, how many of you kind of fall in between those two realities? Okay, show of hands. Okay, good amount of you. I'm with you guys, kind of in between those two extremes. I just recently had a baby, and anytime I meet someone new and I mention the ages of my children, I'm met with a look of surprise or shock even. And to fill you in, I have 3 kids. I have a 7-month-old, I have a 12-year-old, and I have a 21-year-old. Yes. I have had one, yes, thank you. I have had one child per decade since the 90s. Planning, I don't know. And I'm well aware that if I continue down that pattern and have one more child 10 years from now, that I will probably end up on the national news. So no, that's not my plan. And just like any proud mom, I brought a picture of my kids I want to show you. Aww. So those are my 3. This is baby Zara, Micah is my middle, and Jordan is my 21-year-old. Now, in the past few months since having my baby, I was told more than once that I look like I could pass for being in my 20s. Now, who's laughing at that? Somebody laughed at that. It's not funny. Now, I don't know if those people were lying or if they were just being nice, but I don't care. I choose to believe in the name of Jesus. I believe. Yes. By the way, photo credit to Karen Alquist Photography. Woo! Karen is a very talented wife of our Pastor Randall, so just wanted to give her props for that. Okay. So that's my crew. Now, I recognize that for those of you who have your kids neatly and perfectly spaced out, some of you 2.5 years down to the day almost, that this picture probably represents your worst nightmare. But for me, this picture represents letting God do his thing. I became pregnant with my oldest son, Jordan, while in college at the age of 18, and I gave birth at 19. His father and I were young, very young, and we were just as dumb. During the pregnancy, our relationship ended. But in our teenage wisdom, we felt confident that we would be able to co-parent this precious child that we were bringing into the world, even though we ourselves had no relationship. So that was our plan. Now, in hindsight, that really wasn't much of a plan, but to my 18-year-old self, it certainly was. I had all these ideas as to how things were going to play out. And having plans is necessary. Plans guide us, they give us direction, they give us a destination to aim for. The Bible instructs us to plan. If you have your Bibles with you, Luke chapter 14, verse 28 says, "Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it?" Even if they aren't ironclad and foolproof, we do need to establish and walk out intentional plans in every area of our life, in each of the multiple journeys that we are on. Without a plan and without direction, it is quite possible to stay exactly where you are, week after week, month after month, year after year, or worse, to take steps backwards, or to end up someplace that you had no intention of being. I love this quote from Yogi Berra. Any Yankees fans in the house tonight? Go Yankees! Boo! My Red Sox territory here, huh? Okay. So Yogi Berra says, if you don't know where you're going, you'll end up someplace else. And I think that's so accurate. Having a destination that you're working towards is necessary. But as we all know, things don't always go according to plan. And as you can probably imagine, the plan that I had as a teenager to co-parent Jordan with someone that I had no relationship with didn't quite work out. Jordan's father went from being involved to being less involved to not being involved at all. And sadly, shortly after my son's first birthday, his father and I parted ways. The plan that I had in mind did not line up with God's plan for me. Proverbs 19:21 reminds us that many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. My plan didn't match God's purpose. Now, when I say that Jordan's father and I went our separate ways, I do mean separate. When it became painfully clear that he had no intention of being involved, I left Florida, where we were at the time, to come to New York to pursue my career in fashion. And Jordan's father went on to do whatever it is that 19-year-old boys do. I don't know. Unfortunately, the contact between the two of them stopped. So I was a young single mom, raising my son on my own and trying to make it in New York. Now, raising children is hard, right, moms? Yes. Raising them on your own is that much harder. And I know that many in the room today can attest to that. And if you're a single mom or a single dad here on this Mother's Day, I just want to acknowledge and applaud you. So we can applaud you. Because what you do is not easy. As a single parent, it all begins and ends with you. You know that. All the day-to-day stuff, even with moral and practical support, as I did have, at the end of the day-to-day decisions, the financial decisions, the disciplining, it all ends with you. So yeah, raising children on your own is hard. Raising them on your own when you're young, when you're basically a kid yourself, is, in my opinion, one of the toughest tasks out there. But if you would have asked me during that time if what I was doing was difficult, I don't think I would have said yes. I was simply doing what I needed to do. I was simply moving forward and taking that next step in my journey. And of course, there were some hard times and low moments. I remember one time in particular, Jordan's preschool class had to draw pictures of their fathers, and Jordan didn't know what to draw. That was a sad reminder for me. And then there was this stage that Jordan went through where anytime he would ask for something and the answer was no, he would respond with, well, my dad would say yes. That was not a cute stage. It broke my heart to hear Jordan talk like that about a father that he didn't know. It also broke my heart to discover that I had a bratty 3-year-old who knew exactly how to manipulate me. Sorry, Jordan. He's not a brat anymore, most of the time. Okay. Never mind the fact that Jordan had built up his dad in his head to be some sort of hero who granted his every wish. During the time, I began to struggle financially. I would commute from Westchester, New York, into Manhattan with Jordan each day so that he could be in daycare near my job and we didn't have to spend the entire day apart. So we had long days. We'd wake up early in the morning, catch a train into the city, and then return home in the evening. One night, I got off the train to find my car missing from the parking lot, only to discover that it had been repossessed. Since I no longer had a car, I decided to try and find a place to live in Manhattan where I didn't need a car and where I could be close to my job. Now, we all know that living in New York City is pretty much unaffordable. The only place that I could afford was an awful apartment in an awful building in an awful neighborhood. But it's what I could afford, so I took it. Now, I am not exaggerating when I say that it was not a nice place to live. One night, I left something out that had food on it, like a rag or something, and the very next morning, I woke up and there were little holes where the rats ate out the food. Which I know, it's really gross. And there were a cast of characters, very interesting people in the neighborhood too, as you can imagine. One time I was getting rid of some clothes that were no longer wearable, and I bagged the clothes and I threw it in the garbage at the side of the building. And the very next day, I saw the superintendent of my building walking down the street, strutting one of my shirts. So yeah, very interesting. Not a place that you would want to live. So yeah, in retrospect, it was a tough time. But I think what kept me going, what kept me moving forward and taking that next step on my journey was that I had hope. I had hope that my son would be okay. I had hope that we, our little family of two, were going to be all right. Psalm 33:18 says, "Behold, the eye of the Lord is on those who fear him, on those who hope in his mercy." And the word hope is defined as to desire with expectation of obtainment or fulfillment, or to expect with confidence. 2 years ago, I started a financial coaching business and blog called Hope and Sense. It was important to me that the concept of hope be a part of the business name and a big part of the business itself. And that's because I believe strongly in the power of hope, the power of both its presence and the power of its absence. The absence of hope can have devastating and negative consequences, as we see tragically played out in the news repeatedly, while the presence of hope can serve as life and fuel and a beautiful motivator. When you're working on or working towards something, whether or not you expect a favorable outcome actually affects the outcome. I call it the hope factor. Hope is a factor that affects all of our plans. Now, some of you who know me also know that my financial struggles eventually led me to being saddled with a lot of debt down the year, a few years later, $74,000 to be exact. And for years, I did nothing about my financial mess because I felt hopeless. I felt defeated. I would say and think things like, I'm never going to get out from under this mess. I guess I'll always be in debt. It would take a miracle for me to pay everything off. The only way I can get out of debt is if I win the lottery, which pretty much would be a miracle, right? But I actually believed those things. I was hopeless. I had no expectation of a favorable outcome. And as a result, I didn't get one. I didn't act. I stayed where I was. Because when you're hopeless, you tend to think, what's the point, right? But hope eventually was the catalyst that jump-started my getting out of debt. I started believing that there was a way out, and that if I made some changes and worked hard, really, really hard, that I would be able to get rid of the debt, that I could turn things around. And that sense of hope led me to take action. And I began making changes and was able to pay off the $74,000 of debt in just 2 years. Now that I have the privilege of working with people one-on-one in their finances and walking alongside others as they pay off their debt, hands down, it's the people who have a sense of hope about their situation, who expect a favorable outcome, that are the ones that are able to turn things around. The multiple journeys that you are on must be fueled by hope if you want to move forward. If hope isn't fueling your journeys and your next steps, then they are being fueled by the opposite, hopelessness and discouragement. Now, you may not recognize this, but discouragement is a tool of the enemy. In fact, it's one of his most effective tools. There's an old tale about the devil selling off some of his tools. You may have heard it. If not, it goes like this. It was announced that the devil was going to put his tools up for sale. On the day of the sale, the tools were placed on display. There was hatred, envy, jealousy, deceit, pride, idolatry, and others, each marked with its own price. Laid apart from the rest was a simple and harmless-looking wedge-shaped tool. "What's the name of this tool?" asked someone, pointing to it. "That's discouragement," the devil replied. Well, why have you priced it higher than all of the others, even though it's more worn than the other tools? Because, replied the devil, it's more useful to me than all the others. With that tool, I can pry open and get inside a man's heart when I cannot get near him with any of the other tools. Once I get inside, I can use him in whatever way suits me best. It's well worn because I use it on almost everyone, and few people even know it belongs to me. How many of you were in church last week when we had the guest speaker, Pastor Jimmy Rollins? Okay, good amount of you, and clapping and hoot hoot, because that's how good it was. It was an awesome message, and if you were not here last week, I encourage you to go online and check it out. It's a very, very powerful message. But about 10 seconds after church ended, or really before church ended, I started hearing, Alea, you have to speak next week after that message? There's no way you're going to be nearly as impactful. Pastor Jimmy had people getting out of their seats, practically running around this place. You're not going to do that. That is the enemy speaking. It is in the devil's best interest for you and for me to be discouraged from taking a step forward on our journeys and from operating in God's will for our lives. And what's so dangerous about discouragement and hopelessness is that they can be subtle. When we hear the word hopeless, we tend to think of it in extreme terms only. We kind of conjure up images of people, down on their luck, tattered, like almost literally looking hopeless. And as a result, we tend to dismiss it and we fail to recognize it when we ourselves are discouraged or hopeless. Discouragement and hopelessness are subtle. And they often sound like legitimate reasons not to take steps forward, not to move forward and take action. They can sound like, I don't have the right skills. I'm not smart enough. I don't have enough money. I don't have a car. I'm not ready. I'm not like him. I'm not like her. I'm not like that. I'm not like Pastor Jimmy. I'm just not good at that. It's not going to work. What will other people think? I'm too young. I'm too old. I didn't go to college. I didn't finish college. I didn't get the right degree in college. I'm not qualified. I'm overqualified. I'm not married, or maybe I'm married. I'm a single mom. I'm too black. I'm too white. I'm too purple. But you don't know my situation. No, I don't know your situation, but I do know that no situation is without hope. And I also do know that God knows your situation. And this is what he says about it. He says he knows the plans and thoughts he has for you. He has plans for peace and well-being, not for disaster. He has plans to give you hope in your final outcome. So I continued raising Jordan as a single mom, focusing both on him and on my career in fashion. I had very specific plans for the milestones that I wanted to reach in my career, and I worked diligently to hit them. Romantic relationships were not a part of my plan. I'd begun to accept my status as a single mom, and I started to settle into that role. In fact, for quite some time, I wore a wedding or a gold band on my ring finger to appear like I was married. I just was not interested. But then God started to do his thing. And when my son was almost 5, God unexpectedly brought someone into our lives who would go on eventually to be my husband and parent Jordan. This actually was someone who I knew from my past, but it was someone who I did not in a million years expect to marry. While I was raising Jordan, God was doing his thing in his life. So my little family of 2 became a family of 3, and eventually the family of 5 that we are today. That someone that God brought into our lives was Jordan's father. After going our separate ways for 4 years, in the most amazing and beautiful way, God reunited us. in our time apart, God grew and matured us individually so that we could be better equipped to parent Jordan together and be husband and wife to each other. Now, thank you. I see someone nodding. Someone guessed that. While I do regret the time that our family lost, I know that the path we were led on was God doing his thing. Habakkuk 2:3 reminds us that no matter our plans, we need to remember and trust God's plan and God's timing. It says, "But these things I plan won't happen right away. Slowly, steadily, surely, the time approaches when the vision will be fulfilled. If it seems slow, do not despair, for these things will surely come to pass. Just be patient. They will not be overdue a single day." Amen. That's awesome. We can't always see how a situation will play out or where our journeys will lead us, but God can, and he always, always has our best interests in mind. Just like the video that we watched a few minutes ago, he wants nothing but the best for us. And he will work things out in a way that not even you, especially you planners, can plan or imagine. So if you're in here today and you're experiencing difficulty in any of your journeys, and you're feeling anxious, worried, unsettled, frustrated, helpless, discouraged, or hopeless, rest assured that God is doing his thing. Now, to be clear, that doesn't mean that we sit back and do nothing, or that we act recklessly or irresponsibly and just expect God to come and clean things up. No, in order for God to do his thing, we need to do our thing. We need to do our part. Because hope alone will get you absolutely nowhere. You can't hope your way out of debt. You can't hope your way to retirement. You can't use hope as a down payment on a home. You can't hope your way to a successful career, if only you could, right? You can't hope your way to a successful career or a healthy body or solid relationships. No, you have to act. A sense of hope must be backed up with clear action. When Jesus was on earth, each time he performed a miracle, the recipient of the miracle needed to take some sort of action, whether it was to get up, to touch him, to pray, to believe. You had to take some sort of action. You have to act, and God has equipped us to do just that. So if you're in here, if there's anything that I hope, I expect you to walk away with today, it's this. Whatever journey you're on, whatever situation you're facing, do what is within your power to do. Work at the situation, educate yourself about it, get help, put a plan together, identify and take your very next step. And of course, and most importantly, pray about the situation. But do everything and anything that is within your ability to do. But do it with an expectation, a hope, of a favorable outcome, and leave room for God to do the rest. Allow God to do his thing. Trust and expect that he will do his thing. So whatever it is, if you're struggling, moms, if you're struggling with a child or a teen at home, know that God is doing his thing. If you're experiencing tension in your marriage, know that God is doing his thing. If your financial situation is not what you want it to be, know that God is doing his thing. If you're facing discouragement in any of your journeys, know that God is doing his thing. Whatever it is, God is doing his thing. Now, before I hand things back over to Pastor Ken, I want to leave you with this blessing found in Ephesians. I pray that out of his glorious riches, he may strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power together with all the Lord's holy people to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us. Thank you.